Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Dr. to Doctor in the Chat Room. We are so happy that you guys would come back each Saturday and share this hour with us as we discuss relevant topics that could impact our communities and our world. We cannot do this without you, so thank you for your support. And I want to say hello to my co-host, Nicole. How are you, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing really great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited about this relevant topic that we have today. We have some beautiful guests in the chat room, and looking forward to hearing more from them momentarily. Just want to remind our audience, as we always do, take care of yourselves, stay safe. And whatever that looks like for you, stay safe. We don't talk about the pandemic much anymore. We don't know if we're in it or out of it, but we just want you guys to be good to yourselves and take care of yourselves. This is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And this is the time that we draw attention to the prevalence of sexual assault and educate individuals and communities about how prevalent it is and how to prevent it. And these young ladies that are with us today, Marie McKenzie and Veronica, is it Nealy?
It's Veronica Nealy-Morris, but you can just call me Veronica.
Got it. We are so glad to have Marie and Veronica with us today. And we would love for both of you. Let's start with you, Veronica. Just tell us a little bit about you. Your background, and let's just kind of jump and dive into this topic today.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to be a part of your show. My name is Veronica Nealy-Morris, and I am the president of a nonprofit organization here in Orlando, where we focus on empowering women and girls in the area of personal development and entrepreneurship. I am a 30-year veteran as a respiratory therapist. I am a published author, and I run a daycare center. So I do a little bit of everything, but I enjoy every bit of it. And I consider myself the spokesperson for the voiceless.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. How about you, Marie?
I am Marie McKenzie, professionally a registered nurse for over 24 years. I'm an award-winning and best-selling author, a coach for survivors of sexual violence, and am a thriving survivor myself. I currently teach new nurses before they get to the bedside, so I'm no longer actively at the bedside, and I'm a strong, passionate advocate for sexual assault victims. So thank you for having me tonight.
We are absolutely honored to have you both. Man, I have a bit of a nursing background, Marie. I just couldn't make it in the nursing world. And so hats off to those that do.
Yes. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, I just was thinking, we talked offline right before the show started about each of these ladies kind of giving us their own bio. And sometimes we will ask for a bio and then we just read it, but how eloquently they just put their amazing accomplishments and contributions to the world. I'm almost like, man, we might need to do that more often, because when we just read someone's bio, we're just reading it, but the way y'all just brought that to life was pretty amazing. And so I have a lot of questions, but let's move on.
So let's start with you, Veronica. You were a teenage mother. So do you feel being a victim of child abuse led you down that road of being a teenage mom?
Absolutely, yes. And I always say that I didn't become sexually active because I was hot and bothered. I was trying to connect or feel something. I think the first time I had sex was about 17 years old, and I ended up getting pregnant. I shut myself down because of the child abuse, and I didn't feel anything. And I heard so many people talking about how great sex was. That was the only reason why I had sex, was I've never been the type that was hot and bothered. And looking at the statistics, I think it says 70% of girls that are pregnant usually it's due to child abuse or being abused as a child, because you feel that maybe that's your superpower, because it wasn't that which he's my ex-husband. I'm happily married today for 15 years, but it wasn't that he forced himself on me or what have you, or that I just wanted to have sex. I felt like that was a part of my superpower. My father raped me at the age of 5, so why not? So that's why we say that it's so important that we don't judge these teenage girls that are pregnant. We don't know their story. And there's always a guy that's attached to that pregnancy, but the fingers are always pointing at us, because even growing up, all the people in my small town looked at me like I was a bad kid or I was super fast, but it had nothing to do with that. It wasn't, I can't even remember getting an orgasm, to be honest. I just ended up pregnant. Now that was something.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, I'm very candid. So if I'm saying anything that's not proper, let me know, because I don't know how to be other than what I am.
Yeah. We appreciate that. So I grew up in a small town too. And I remember the scarlet letter vibe,
Yes.
right? That
Yes.
young girls had when they were pregnant. Some may have been sent somewhere for a while until they had the baby, and so they come back, and it's just as if they were never pregnant. You know what I mean? Growing up in the church, I started playing piano in church for the church as a little girl in a really small town, and I was kind of grabbed to go play at this church and go, and girls sometimes would get pregnant in the church, and they were no longer allowed to be in the choir, or so I've seen so much of that, like I said, that scarlet letter vibe that in the little small towns, and nobody asked what happened.
Exactly. Let me just add this here. I was so ashamed of being pregnant because it just showed you that you did the dirty, because we didn't have a name for it back then, but we just did the dirty, that I literally hid my pregnancy for 7 months. I never had prenatal care or anything like that. And I start telling people that I had a tumor. As a matter of fact, I had to hide it because no one ever asked me, were you pregnant? Even though my stomach was getting big. I think my mom asked me once or twice and I said no. And once I said no, she really didn't ask me again. But it was such a shame. I was so ashamed. And a lot of the parents, and I understand because I have kids now, we have grown kids, but they didn't want their kids hanging out with me because I was pregnant. But the truth of the matter is they were sleeping around with both legs. I was the one that just got caught. In hindsight, 2020, you look back now and you see those same individuals, their life went a little different than my life. But I try not to judge people because you don't know the journey. But yes, I think that's a big contributor to teenagers getting pregnant at an early age, because that's all we know. We don't really know what love is because, it's been shattered. And when my ex-husband paid me some attention, and he was like 10 years older, it wasn't that I was just looking for a guy, but he paid me some attention. As a matter of fact, I said to him, do you know who I am? I'm a gamble. Because I had such low self-esteem. So the first guy that looked my way, I was in love. My daughter says all the time, Mama, you were special. I was.
I've heard people say when a child is violated in a certain way, right, they might grow up believing that that's what they have to offer the world, right? Is that something that you can speak a little bit to, Marie?
That at some of the victims that I've spoken to, yes, being victimized as a child, especially if like the parent, especially the mother, didn't believe when they report because it was the husband or boyfriend of the mother. And then the mother sided with the boyfriend against the child, and sometimes even physically hurt the child. It's like, you're lying. Yes. So
So difficult.
When you so Marie, will you give us a little background on your experience? Will you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, growing up, I didn't know anything about sexual assault, adults crossing the line sexually with children. However, at the age of 11, one of my aunt's husband added me to the list of his victims. I hadn't heard anything prior to that he was a pedophile. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been close to him. At the time it happened, my aunt was home for childbirth. The woman, they give birth at home, and everybody was busy about, and I started reading at a young age. So I had a book in hand, I was sitting on the sofa, and he was sitting there reading the paper. And the next thing I know, the paper was over my legs and his hand was making his way between my legs. And I just I couldn't move. I just clamped my legs shut. I couldn't stand up or anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anyone about being assaulted for years until I became an adult. I told one of my aunts. However, he went on to molest other people before me, after me, was never held accountable to this day. Wow. The family knew, the community knew, and everybody remained silent bystanders. So I've had other experiences. It's not just him. I know there were experiences in high school, traveling on public transport. I grew up in Jamaica, so we had public transport, and it still gives me tachycardia remembering some of the incidents. So yes, and victims go through a lot of emotions and keep silent for different reasons.
Yeah.
I wasn't threatened in any way by anyone. I was always, children must be seen and not heard.
Absolutely.
So you just learn to keep your mouth shut. And at the instant when it happened with my aunt's husband, it was like, oh my, she just had a baby. It's going to be shameful to the family and everything. Why did I think that? I have no clue why my thought was of others instead of myself. But I kept silent, and that didn't serve me well, and now that I'm talking about it, I won't shut up, advocating for others and going public with my story has helped so many people, even family members that I had no clue were victims of other people in the family. Wow. Because I thought he was the only pedophile in the family. Turns out he's not the only pedophile in the family, and I'm not the only victim in the family.
It makes me so angry that people have to be victimized and then worry about shaming the family.
Yes.
Exactly, right?
It makes me so angry, and we've talked about it on this show many, many times, that they have to be victimized and then expect to show up at the Thanksgiving gathering.
Yeah.
And sit at the table with their pedophile,
Yeah.
It makes me angry. One of the questions that I saw somebody pose the other day on social media is, when is the right time, or should a person, male or female, tell a potential partner that they've been either molested or raped?
That's a tough question because it's up to the individual. Like for me, I would think at the beginning of the relationship, because not everyone can handle that. So it would be best if they're aware of it before they get into it, because some people may feel like they have been deceived. But however, it's up to that survivor.
I saw you nodding, Veronica.
I'm in agreement with what you're saying, Marie, because when I met my husband 15 years ago, I wanted him to know everything about me. I wanted him to know what I was getting into. When we first met, I took him home, and after we started dating, I took him home maybe 6 months, and I wanted him to, quote, run his fingers through my hair, because what I wanted him to know is that I wore wigs, that I didn't wear shoes all the time, that I was abused, and that this is what I was going to do. Are you going to be able to handle this? And like you said, even in my coaching practice, I don't force people to tell their story, because once you open up that Pandora box, you got to be ready for the backlash. And it's heavy if you're not ready for it. So every individual, every victim will know when it's time. But I think it is important that the person that you're dating and your possible future mate, you need to let them know what you're going through, because they're going to be hearing these conversations and it can be embarrassing. So it's important that you, the victim or the victim, when that person feels safe and comfortable, and if it is the right guy or the right woman, they will be able to do it. I needed my husband to know who I was.
Yeah. And another thing is not telling your potential partner or husband or wife about that. Remember, even if you're healed, certain things may trigger something in you during the relationship. And that person needs to be prepared how to support you, how to help you. Yeah. And if that is hitting them blindsided, then, you know, they may not know what to do or how to support you or even get help for you. So,
well, you take, for instance, when I married my husband, my girlfriends and family members, the one that was participating in the wedding, they bought me a lot of lingerie. And that was something that I was never comfortable with. And I'm still not necessarily comfortable with it today. And again, I share all of this here because there's such a long-term and a long reach effect of this abuse. Again, I'm 56 years old and I'm still working through some things. So for me to just put on the lingerie and walk around, because as a child, I always went to bed ready to run. So I always had clothes on and I had shoes on the side so that I could get away when I got old enough to run. So to sleep with no clothes on, that was very, very, very uncomfortable for me. And I'm still processing. The truth of the matter is they don't care how long the lingerie on anyway. So, but I wasn't comfortable with that. And I needed him to know that. And he was the right guy for me that God sent for me. So he understood that.
That is good.
Marie, how about for you? Because that was one of the questions that I had. How has this impacted or affected you now that you are an adult and you kind of, you know, have had a chance to take a look back and help other people? How has this impacted your worldview? You know, your idea of like safety? How did it impact you?
Well, I had low self-esteem for a very, very long time. I was suicidal for a long time, didn't have a plan or anything, but the thoughts were there, haunted me for a long time. And when I first became a nurse, I went directly to the emergency room. So that's the first time I started taking care of sexual assault victims. I'm a sexual assault nurse examiner also. So in caring for them, my traumas like slapped me in the face. And I was like, oh, I'm still processing this. I hadn't taken care of myself. I hadn't told anyone yet. So I needed to work on me also. So which I did. I didn't formally like get a coach or a therapist, but aligning myself with people and organizations who love and support victims. So I learn and garner tools and resources that I use to help me. So now when I encounter a victim, I can share from my own experience, understand more what they are going through. I once had a patient in the emergency room that was assigned to another nurse. I'm just saying this for example. She was assigned to another nurse and the nurse told the charge nurse, I'm not taking care of a rape victim. Now she was reassigned to me.
Wow.
And I was excited. I wanted to take care of her. I know what she was going through. Based on my experience, I was trained at the time. And I walked in and she said, I don't want you to be my nurse. And I was like, okay. I went back to the charge nurse and she said, I'm not reassigning her. You're her nurse. Now, I didn't think I should have been forced on her. I mean, it's almost like she was being raped all over again. Anyway, I walked back in and I explained to her, I'm so sorry, they're not changing the assignment. I'm your nurse. I'm the only one there who wanted to take care of her that night. And she said, okay, I took care of her. And she was very happy that I took care of her. She, she was expressing that at the end. But where was I going with this? But just to be able to support the victims where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and know that, oh, I was saying, maybe she didn't want me to take care of her. I may have reminded her of her perpetrator. There's a woman with a black woman with a bald head who walked in her room. I could have reminded her of her perpetrator. I never asked her why, because that was not important to me. You know, I took care of her, compassionate, have made her feel safe, provided a safe space for her to speak and start her healing.
We are at a break. We're gonna go to break, and we will be back to continue this discussion on Dr. the Doctor in the Chat Room on 94.7 FM. We will be right back in a moment.
And we're back. Thanks for hanging out with us on this beautiful Saturday. We are here with Miss Marie and Miss Veronica. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here and talking about this really, really important topic. It is something that I think we really don't have dialogue enough about, right? And I think when that happens, we almost enable these things to keep happening in our communities. And so thank you both for being here and just sharing your stories. Marie, when we were on break, you had mentioned something that I think is really important. The first segment, we talked a lot about what happened to the two of you and your perpetrators and them being family members. And you mentioned something interesting about that I think we need to say. Talk a little bit about how this also does happen to men, because there was a show that we did a while back on domestic violence. And a lot of times we attribute all domestic violence victims to being women. And there are male domestic violence victims, just like there are male sexual assault victims. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, there are more male sexual assault victims than we know, because they don't report as much. You know, sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes. However, male victims report less than females. Number one, they have unique challenges. They're ashamed. I'm a man. I should, you know, I should have fought back. Am I going to be gay? You know, they were thinking about all these things. And I just wanted to mention that perpetrators are not just always male. There are female on male, female on children, just the same way you have male and male, male and woman, and male and children. So the males, we need to support our men, you know, investigate a little bit, because some of them, they're so angry. Ask questions, you know, try to give them space to open up when they are ready, because if they're not ready, they're just not ready. But and don't ask them to recount the experience. They don't have to go in details and say what happened. I have had adult male victims and child male victim. One thing with one of the adult male victims was he was raped at a 9-year-old by a family member. And at the age of 32, he came to our ER because he was raped at a party. And the thing he said to me, when the perpetrator grabbed him by the hand, he didn't resist. He just went back to his little 9-year-old self and followed. It's as if he was just following his uncle into the room to be raped. And he didn't want the police involved. He just wanted the prophylaxis medications that we ordered, that we provide for STDs. So most of these never go anywhere, because number one, they blame themselves. And number one, I'm a man. I should have fought back. I should have. So the shame, the guilt, reliving the trauma.
Have either of you confronted your perpetrators?
I haven't.
Yes, I did. My father he was my father. My father was the one that started molesting me at the age of 5 up until about 13, 14 when I started fighting back. Probably at the age of, we were living in Miami, Florida, at the age of about 25. I remember him being at his business and he had a lot of church people there. And I just got angry because they doted on him and thought he was such a great guy. So I said to him, then why did you molest me? And he just looked me right in my face and said, I'm lying. And I never questioned it again because I just knew he wasn't lying, but he just said I was lying, and that was the end of it. He never owned up to it.
Wow.
So what can we do to continue these conversations and hopefully have more people like you, like yourselves, able to open up and at least free themselves, right? Even if they're not confronting the perpetrators. That's
I would say I'll answer one of them, then I'll turn it over to you, Marie. I think the first thing we need to do is do what we're doing right now, having these honest, open conversations. Be the example of what we want, not be ashamed, take away in the stigma of being molested, because this is the thing. This is something that happened to us or happened to me. It's not something that can define me. Once we figure that much out, then we need to keep this conversation going, because most people, just like our family member, my family member, we did a show the other day, and I haven't even put it on my page because it's still scary. You're still afraid of that family member that you value that relationship with not talking to you, because you kind of restored some of the relationship, but the more I talk about it, I stand a chance of losing some very important relationships to me, and that is scary. I am going to eventually put it on there this week because this thing is so much bigger than me. But we have to have these very hard conversations, because we're not going to necessarily, I believe, completely stop child abuse, but we can lessen the incidents. For instance, my children was raised without being abused. That's one. Their children, because they're educated, they know. I've taught my grandbabies and my granddaughters and my grandsons about their bodies, what their boundaries are, who's supposed to touch that and who's not supposed to touch it. I've taught them about their self-worth. I don't care who it is. Nobody's supposed to be down there. I remember my grandbaby, she said to me, her dad was changing her, and she said, oh, nobody's supposed to be touching my poom poom but my dad. I'm like, no, honey, don't say that at daycare because they're going to call DCF on us. But we have to educate. We have to keep talking about it. And we have to talk about it in a way that these kids can understand it and not be afraid. So we have to keep these conversations going.
Yes. I totally agree with Veronica. Keep the conversation going. And at an open line of communication with our children. What's correct, what's not correct, and use proper terms for body parts. Let them know what it is. If you don't tell them, someone else is going to tell them. Let them know what to come and tell you. Not be afraid, because then they'll go to someone else. There are children who are being trafficked from under their parents' nose. They'll go talk online, go and meet the pimp, get trafficked, and go back home. They have these apps on the phones to hide messages. Parents need to get educated. Don't think about, oh, my child needs to have her privacy. Hell with privacy. You need to know what is going on. Who are their online friends? Who are they sleeping over with? Don't trust anyone. Pedophiles are not always roaming the streets. They pray where they are trusted. In your homes, there are siblings who are molesting other siblings, extended family members, neighbors, or schools, coaches, and other teachers. In our churches, in the pulpits and on the pew, we have to guard our children every step of the way.
And I think that's such a great point. And I've had parents ask questions of, well, what's the appropriate age to start talking to kids about that? I don't think I don't think it matters. I think you talk to them when they can understand.
Exactly.
And you let them know, just like you were saying, these are the appropriate places for people to touch, and these are the inappropriate places. Because like you said, if you don't share that information, somebody else will, and it may be the wrong information that they.
Yes.
Learn.
And
And
talking
another
about
thing you have
age,
to,
children are being molested months old.
Yeah.
So as soon as they can understand, you start telling them.
Yeah.
Yes.
we start reading to our kids while they're in the womb.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you have to pay attention to your child, because there's always warning signs.
Mhm.
There was a young, we do a etiquette
Talk about
class
that
at
too,
the
Veronica, as you're talking. As you're talking, mention some of those warning signs for us, please.
My own personal warning signs. You can look in a child's eyes and tell you whether that kid is dead or alive. I met a young girl. There's a situation that happened here in Orlando, and she was a friend of mine and a member of a church that I went to. Wonderful couple. This woman and her husband was abusing those kids. One day she came to church, and I had seen them on the news, and I'm like, no way. And I said to her, did you really do that? And she said, no, I didn't. She brought the kid to church. The kid was a mixed kid. The kid has bruises from her forehead, black and blue, to her fingertip in church. And the mother said she wasn't abusing the kid. So something had to be wrong with that mom. And I said, I left the church that day and I said, God, if the pastor doesn't say anything, I would never return here. Needless to say, he did say something. But there are warning signs. As a parent, we have to pay, just like we pay attention to our car. We know our car is not running right.
Yeah.
Just when we pay attention to our weight, we know when we've gained a little bit weight. We have to pay attention to our kids. We got to get to know our kids. We have to cultivate and develop a relationship with those children. I can tell when my husband is not right. I can tell when my grandchildren are not feeling right. And you have to know each kid is different. Yeah. How to approach that conversation with that kid. I can look at a kid's eyes and tell them whether or not they're happy or not. If I know my kid, I'll know when there's something off. No matter what they say, I know. And then I have to figure out a way to ask that conversation. And I'm always looking. I'm always paying attention. When my grandkids got a certain age, the boy and the girl, they didn't sleep in the same room because what I said before, a penis does not know that vagina is related to them. There is going to be a reaction. So when they get a certain age, they cannot sleep in the same bed. They can't take a bath together. And you explain to them why. Because even as little, having kids at daycare, these little kids, they get erections and children are just curious. So you have to let them know it's okay. Yeah, this is normal. This is a penis. This is a boy. You don't want them to be afraid to talk about sex. Yeah. You have to create a safe place for them, a safe place in the sense of you got to be whole, you got to be right, you have to take care of yourself. When you find yourself getting overwhelmed, and if you've raised kids, it's overwhelming sometimes, reach out for help because the parents have to be whole in order to truly protect the children. Now, let me just say this here. I don't think we are going to completely cut it out because it's been since the beginning of time. But we can definitely make an impact or who's abused, and when they do get abused, that they don't have to stay stuck for the rest of their lives. I know clients that are 65, 70 years old, still struggling. Yeah. And you don't have to struggle that long. Do you ever get over it? No. I don't really know if you get over it or not, because I don't know if some of the things that I go through is just a part of being human, a part of life, but I got the right tools that I can use to help me through whatever process I have to go through. I had severe anxiety. I'm 56. The devil's a liar. 56 years old, and I'm just learning how to get on the plane all by myself because a lot of the abuse occurred when we were going on vacation. For years before I met my second wonderful husband, and my first husband was a nice guy. He just never grew up. Preston, talking about your daddy, just in case she's listening, but he just never grew up. Going on the highway, hearing the sound of the highway, hearing the sound of truck just triggered. It felt like hamburger patties inside of me. And I couldn't explain it because I didn't know the language. That's one of the things that I teach my children. How do you feel? I feel some kind of way. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Are you angry? And make a game out of it. Are you hurting? You know, you have to teach them how to express themselves. But I was telling Marie, I'm still nervous because we're supposed to be taking a trip in May. That caused anxiety because I have to get on the plane. Those things trigger me still. I'm getting better. I think I went to Dallas, Texas. I was awarded the Lifetime Presidential Award by Biden last year. And my husband had to go to the airport with me. Big old grown 5'10", 115 pounds person had to be escorted to the airport with her husband, crying like a baby, feeling dumb and stupid. But I made it. I made it. So it's a process. And I wrote on my page that I'm in the air, nothing but God. So you got to, in order to heal, in order to help yourself, you have to get used to being uncomfortable.
This thing about family, right? And that uncomfortable space that it puts everybody in, you know, like you said, you don't want to lose certain relationships. But I just think it's so unfair. I just think, you know, for me, it shouldn't even be a second thought. If I've been abused, I should be able to say that. And if my father did it, right, I should be able to say that my father did this. And unfortunately, you know, it's unfortunate what it would do to my father, right? What it would cause for my father. That's really unfortunate, but it's more unfortunate that he did that to me.
Yeah.
That's how I see it, right? And, you know, how can we, I won't say just restore the family relationships, but how do we get family to stop worrying about their shame and understand the significance of the hurt and the shame that's been caused to the victim? I see you smiling, Marie.
No, because I don't think there is any one answer to that. It's all up to the family and where their loyalty lies. Because in most cases, it's not with the victim.
It isn't.
Absolutely.
It's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it even more difficult for people to
come forward.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think even if you've never seen your family take the side of the perpetrator, there's something that deep down you feel like it might happen. And the possibility of that is enough.
Well, it's pretty obvious that they are taking the side of the perpetrator. That's very clear in most situations. Because it's not like, I personally don't think everybody that molests a child should go to prison. I really don't. I know that sounds hard. Sometimes it's best to keep, there's so many situations why that occurs. There's no excuse, but I think we need to work with the perpetrator and the victim. And if it's a pedophile, then they need to go to jail. But families won't do that. And it's hard. I don't blame my family at all. I don't blame anybody that's been involved in my life, because that is it's hard for me sometimes. So it's like this right here. Now that I know better, I do better. If it happens to me or someone I know or a neighbor, I will report it. And I'll just have to deal with the fallout, because it is so much bigger, because this abuse affects the economy. It affects, I'm getting my PhD now, working on my PhD. I should have it by next year, but a PhD in philosophy. But my entire life I felt dumb, and I am absolutely brilliant.
Yes,
I master everything that I try, but I didn't know that it's taken me 1,000,000 years to get there, because I felt dumb. I felt ugly. This haircut, this natural hair, is a part of my growth, because I thought I was just ugly, nappy-headed, big nose, not needed, because that's all I ever heard. I didn't realize that. Look at me. I'm absolutely stunning. I really do believe that. And it's okay. And I say, you know what? We all are wonderful and fearfully made in the image of God. I've been saved since I was probably really saved. First, I got saved because I didn't want to go to hell. Let me be real. That's it. That was for fireproof, right? But once I really developed a personal relationship with God, I started understanding my value and my worth. I remember I've never, and I was a good looking girl. Thank God I didn't know what I know today, because the first time, can I say this, that I had an orgasm is when I was about probably 38 years old, because I had shut myself down. I'm saying how this child abuse affects you long term.
Yeah.
So I was completely numb. That's why I say I don't even know how I had a baby.
Yeah.
But
We are
it was when I went
another.
to God and I said, God, please show me what they mean by an orgasm. You can talk to God about anything.
Yeah,
He will meet you where you are. And when I did, it's like, you know what, Lord, I thank God I didn't know in the past, because I would have been a straight hussy. If I knew,
we're gonna put our,
what this
we
is
gotta go to break,
about?
but we're gonna put you on stage too at some point and let you do a little comedy too. We
You
got
know, I'm very serious.
I know you are. We will be right back in a moment on 94.7 FM.
Don't.
And we are back having a very important conversation today. Marie, you wanted to give us a couple more of the warning signs. So tell us a little about that, because I know we probably have some parents listening today and they're probably asking those questions. What do I need to look for? What do I need to pay attention to? So can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Just some changes in your child's personality. An outgoing child may become withdrawn. A child that's potty trained may return to bedwetting. Johnny may be running away from Auntie Sue or Uncle Johnny. And even your little daughters may be running away from their favorite uncle or aunt. It's not the time to tell them, oh, go hug onto this or Uncle that, or sit on their laps. Start asking questions. Why is this happening?
Wow.
Why is this happening?
So
keep your eyes open.
Yeah. And maybe even discuss a little bit about the grooming process, right? Because I've heard people say, nobody is to tickle my child. My child's not to sit on anybody's lap, right? Because there are these behaviors that perpetrators have that they use to kind of groom children. So can either of you or both of you speak to what that might look like?
Well, I'll start with my own personal story of grooming. I didn't know exactly what it is. I don't think my father groomed me, other than we got a lot of what we call beatings back then. So you were afraid of him. So you did basically what he wanted you to do. But I had an uncle, and like I said, this is a third generational thing. There are people in my family that did, well, one particular person that did abuse me and the other one that tried to abuse me. And I have not even disclose who they are, because that'll probably cut the entire family line. And I'm just not ready to do that. But one of the things that my uncle did, and I have a lot of uncles, so I don't know who it is. I love this guy, and he was so friendly, and he would always, at some point in time, he would sit me on his lap, and I enjoyed that attention from this male. Nothing sexual, but that was my uncle. And then I remember all of a sudden his legs started moving real fast, and I thought he was playing horsey. But and all of a sudden his pants would be wet, and he would just, for some reason, go from being really nice to just pushing me out of his lap and not having anything else to say to me for a while. As I got older, I realized what that was. And let me be honest, I let it continue because he was still my uncle and I did like him. It wasn't anything sexual. It was just, I wanted that attention. Like I said, I'm going to be honest and truthful in everything that I say. So that was a part of grooming. But once it was done, it wasn't anything penetration or what have you, but I understand what it is now. So that's why it's like, no, don't you sit in his lap. Don't you sit in his lap. You put on some pants underneath that dress. So I was overprotected because I want to protect my babies.
Yes, they may give special attention to that child or person they're grooming. Gifts, take them to sporting events, Sometimes they become friends with the parents. They're like loved by all. So if
Mhm.
you want to complain, who's going to believe you? You
Yeah.
know, because this is this nice guy or woman, the pillar of the community, the
Yeah.
most upstanding member of the family. So they ingrain themselves into the family and pay special attention to this child. So by the time the child realizes what's happening, they're like, oh, it's not so bad. You know, you may come to accept it because you're already sucked in. Yeah.
Mm.
So those are some of the ways they do.
Let me just say, when it came down to my father, he was not nice. He didn't groom me. He's just kind of basically, you just did what parents told you to do. I never thought about saying no because I thought a whooping or getting in trouble was worse than what was going on. And I learned how to make myself disappear during those acts. And it was probably every 3 weeks, but it was like you knew what to do. And there was more than just me. So it would be, we would all have to go outside for some reason. It could be 12 o'clock at night. We just had to go outside to pick paper out the yard or what have you. And then while the ones that had been abused, somebody would be missing for about 45 minutes. And when that person shows back up, then we can all go in the house. But I always knew, like I know they always knew, because that person came back crying with red eyes. And we would be angry with that person. What are you crying for? But I was kind of glad it wasn't my turn. But at the same time, anxiety gripped my heart because I knew I was probably next. It was like, I wouldn't want that to happen to any kid in this world. It was just traumatizing. It was just, I used to ask God, what is this? And I used to try to get God to hear me because, I grew up in the church and I was taught that God speaks and I couldn't hear his voice. So I did everything to be a good girl so that I can hear God. But this really had nothing to do with God. We have a free will and there's evil in the world and this stuff happens all the time. Once I understood that it had nothing to do with me, I was able to do a lot of work to get to this point that I am today. I was talking to a young lady the other day. She's 65 years old, still going through. And the things that she went through, you know what I said to her? I need to go back and apologize to my dad and let him get some more because what you've gone through is unbelievable. And I can say those things because the pain that was once upon a time associated with this here is no longer there. So it's not that I'm making light of it, but you have to do what you have to do to get past it. So I can talk about anything. I can be very candid because it's not my fault.
Where was your
These
mom?
things happened to me and I wouldn't change anything in my life because of the things I've gone through. I'm bold, I'm courageous, I'm open, I don't judge anybody, and I'm willing to help anybody that willing to do the work.
Where was your mom during this time?
That's always a question that comes up, and it's still hard for me to say this because I love my mom and children are supposed to love their mom. There was 8 in our family. My mom was right there. I absolutely don't believe she knew because my dad used to aggravate my mom to get her, like when we would go on our vacations, go to Alabama. My dad would just we always got up about 5 o'clock in the morning and he would do something to just aggravate her and vex her so she could eventually say, I'm not going. And then the minute she said, I'm not going, then we all had to rush in the car and leave. And I remember I was afraid to stay in hotels for years because he would always get a room on the side where he can sneak all us in. And then there was this door, which I didn't know what it was back then, that somebody would always disappear. And I still have those dreams sometimes. I actually wrote a book called My Dreams Revealed because there was this door that I was always afraid of. But now, like I said, with child abuse, you're evolving, you're growing, and certain triggers, you're like, oh, so this is because of that. But she was there. Now, she found out for sure at a certain time in our life, and I don't know if it was because of that, but she ended up shooting him, but he didn't die. And that next day he came back and said he was sorry, but he didn't say what he was sorry for, but he continued it. So I don't think she knew what to do. I mean, this is what I tell my family, and this is, I think, why they get mad at me. The truth of the matter, we were not protected, period.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't blame my mother. I don't blame anybody, because you don't know what you'll do when you're in that situation, especially when you're not working and you got a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, even now, you don't want that cousin coming to your house with 15 kids.
Right.
So she was there, and we don't have these conversations today because I don't want to hurt her. Even calling her name and talking about her hurts me to say that. But the truth is the truth. And it's not like I'm blaming her, but these are the facts. She was there, and I know it still hurts her. So I don't have this conversation with her because I value our relationship. We don't have a mommy and daughter relationship. We have a two adult relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I love her because that's what you're supposed to do. And how can you not love your mom?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is, there's nothing she can say. What can she say? I'm sure she doesn't have any answers. I said to her the other day, because she said, there are so many things that I regret. And I said, Mom, there's no need for you to regret the things that happened to me in my past. You can't change those.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can say is, when you run into a person that's been abused, to say, hey, let me give you my daughter's number. She's gone through that. But they won't do that, because again, that'll bring shame on the family.
Marie, I see you were going to say something.
Yeah. Do you ever think that she may need help healing?
She does, but you have to want it, and you have to own up to it. She does, no question about it. And the other individuals that were abused, if you saw them, you would know it.
Mm-hmm.
They look like what they've gone through.
Wow.
Yes. And someone asked me once, how do I help my friend who is struggling with unresolved trauma from sexual assault? And the only thing I could tell her was, like, find some resources and give it to her in writing. So when she is ready, because unless they're ready, there's nothing you can do. You can't force them.
Mm-hmm.
You
But
can't.
yeah, let them know you're there for when they're ready. Provide them with the resource. Maybe they will one day just pick it up and make that call without you knowing, you know, instead of you trying to talk to them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that God has a way. It's just like you, when you start working nursing and you just so happen to be in the emergency room and you met these people that were abused. I believe when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. So God knows how to deliver, whether by many or by few. He will strategically place the right person in your life that you can hear, because a lot of people can't hear me and a lot of people can't hear you. But when you really want to be delivered and you're willing to do the hard work, God will make it happen. You just got to follow through.
Yes, you just got to be ready. You just got to want it.
Yeah. Can I ask if either of you, you guys talk about, you know, your healing and kind of figuring out a way to work through this trauma. Did either of you go to counseling or therapy? And is that something you would recommend that other victims do?
Go ahead, Veronica, you've had experience.
Yes. I highly recommend therapy. And that was one of the problems that I struggled with, because as a Christian, we're not supposed to go to the secular world. We're supposed to stand in line. I have a chapter in my book called Standing in Line number 99, because I got so sick of running to every tent revival, the barefoot pastor, Benny Hinn, trying to be delivered. And I got so sick of people laying hands on me. One day, one guy was laying hands on me and I say, stop it. They thought I had a demon. I didn't have a demon, because it just wasn't working for me. And I told God, I said, God, I don't want to hear anything about Adam, Eve, John, Matthew, or anybody like that. You show me who you are for me. So yes, God works through people. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ is now sitting on the right hand of the Father, and I am his favorite child, and he still ain't coming down. But he has placed people in the earth with the tools and the research and the anointing and the fortitude and the know-how to help us through this process. We got to work. It's just like the Bible. The word of God works when you work it. Mm-hmm. Healing is available when you're really willing to go through the process. That's the only way. Yeah. It's not like the devil tried to attack me or attack you. This is life. Such is life. The Bible says that many of the afflictions of the righteous, but he's right there. So you either have to believe it or not. And I stood on his word. I said, God, you said, according to my faith, be it unto me. I don't care who you didn't heal, but you said, according to your faith, be it unto me. So I believe it is possible. And then we don't use our imagination enough. I started imagining being free, walking like I was free, talking like I was free, you know, and then one day I walked right into it.
Marie, what would you say to that counseling or therapy question? And then I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time for you both to plug your books.
Yeah. I hadn't seek counseling or official therapy. As I said, I aligned myself with people and organizations that support victims and care for them. I'm a strong believer in faith, so I went to my Bible also. I worked through the process. I journaled. And as Veronica said, I pictured myself being free also, manifestations. So, and as a coach for sexual assault victims, those are some of the things I teach also. So the Bible is a very big part of what I believe in and what I do.
So you ladies have both written really awesome memoirs, and I want to leave some time for you both to kind of talk a little bit about that. We probably have about 2 minutes left, so maybe 1 minute for each of you.
Okay. All right, my memoir is called Things That Keep Me Up at Night, and it came out of my entering a 30-day writing challenge that was on Facebook, offered by Nalena Kai, national bestselling author and Essence magazine bestselling author. And so I wrote it in 90 days, actually. The night I attended our informational session, it was about writing a memoir or a self-help book. And I chose the memoir. And I'm like, I remember she said to us, if it's something that hurts, do not write it at night. I got off the Zoom and I started writing about my first experience of being sexually assaulted. So I wrote it in 30 days. It went through editing and beta reading, and I self-published. And because of the group of authors, NK Tribe Called Success, it was the #1 Amazon bestseller. In 2022, it won an award from the Florida Authors and Publishers Association, a silver medal in the education category. So it talks about my experience, the village that helped to support me as I grew up, couldn't have done it without them. And so I paid tribute to the people that helped my mother and me and us, you know, just get through this journey of life, and how I came to be where I am today. The people who influenced me, like my favorite aunt, Herma, she was a nurse in Jamaica, and I always wanted to be like her. So just like
awesome. And we can get that on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon and wherever books are sold online. The audiobook is available on Apple Books only.
Okay. Veronica?
Yes, again, my name is Veronica Nealy-Morris, and I'm also an author. I have 3 books out there. I have My Dream Revealed. It's a story of the dreams that God gave me every night, recurrent dreams for 20 years. That is how he quieted me down to reintroduce himself to me, because I had so much noise going on the outside that he spoke to me through dreams. The other one is a dream journal, because I believe that you do have to write the vision and make it plain. And when I say write the vision, make it plain, you literally have to start writing out what you want. It's important that we journal, because when you journal, you don't have to agree to what you're writing down. You don't have to explain what you're writing down. You just get it out of your body. And then you can always go back to it. Marie, it took me 25 years to write that book, because I never considered myself being a writer. Remember, I was dumb. I wrote journals. And then one day God said, I'm going to allow you to write books. And I turned that book into a book. So it's called My Dreams Revealed. It's a dream journal. And then I have another one called All Jacked Up. Okay. And it just talks about my life story.
Wow.
What about it's a process?
It's a process. You can get those books. It's a process, talks about my life story, because it is a process. We all heal and evolve at certain periods of time. And there's so many different levels of healing. It's just like the Bible says that we're always saved, work out your own salvation, meaning I'm completely healed, but I'm still growing. So it is a process. You can get that on Amazon. You can go on my website and order it, or you can email me and I can ship.
Okay. We are at the end of the show, but what I am so excited about is that you guys are coming back this month. We will inform our audience when that will be. I thank you so much for being here today, and we thank our audience as well for being here today. And we ask that you come back next Saturday, same chat channel, same chat time, right here on Dr. to Doctor in the Chat Room on 94.7 FM. We will see you guys then.